The day I inherited 1,100 acres of Texas land, I thought my biggest problem would be deciding what to do with it. I was wrong. When I arrived at the property, I discovered something impossible. An entire luxury HOA had built a gated community, expensive homes, private roads, and even a beautiful lake, right on land that now legally belonged to me. I stood outside the massive iron gates, holding my uncle's original property survey, staring at the neighborhood beyond it. I checked the documents again, hoping I had somehow misunderstood them, but the boundary lines were clear. There was no missing sale, no transfer, and no legal agreement giving anyone permission to develop the property. So I walked straight to the entrance. The security guard looked at my paperwork, then nervously glanced toward the woman approaching behind him. Her name was Victoria Harrington, the HOA president. She wore a red blazer and carried herself like she owned the entire neighborhood. I calmly introduced myself and explained that I was the new owner of the land. Victoria immediately told me to turn around. She said the community had existed for years and that I had no authority to interfere with it. I held up the survey and asked her one simple question, then explained this. For the first time, Victoria went silent. Her eyes moved from the document to the luxury homes behind her. Then she told me that the land had supposedly been abandoned long before the community was built. That answer didn't make sense. My uncle had owned that property for decades. That night, I returned to his old ranch office and started searching through everything he had left behind. Beneath stacks of maps and dusty records, I found an old folder dated years before the HOA even existed. Inside was an original survey showing the exact boundaries of the property. There was also a warning from my uncle stating that the land could not be legally divided without his approval. Someone had ignored that warning. The next morning, I went to the county records office. I spent hours going through property histories, development documents, and old transfers. Eventually, I found something strange. A development company connected to the HOA had claimed that part of the land was abandoned and available for development. But there was a problem. My uncle had never abandoned it. I hired a property attorney and gave him every document I had found. After reviewing the records, he confirmed what I feared. The HOA appeared to be operating on land they didn't legally own, but proving it would require more than an old deed. While my attorney investigated, Victoria called an emergency HOA meeting. She told the homeowners that I was a troublemaker trying to disrupt their community, but she never told them the truth. Some residents believed her. Others started asking questions. And once those questions began, Victoria's story started falling apart. A few days later, I returned to property and walked along the edge of the community lake. That's where I found something that changed everything. Hidden beneath the grass was an old boundary marker. I checked its location against my uncle's original survey. It matched perfectly. The HOA had built its community around a property boundary that had been there all along. I photographed the marker and sent the evidence to my attorney. His response was immediate. Now we had physical proof. Soon after, my attorney delivered a formal legal notice at the community entrance. Victoria read it once, then read it again. This time, she didn't tell me to leave. She demanded that I leave. My attorney calmly explained that the situation had changed. This was no longer an argument between a homeowner and an HOA president. The actual property owner had arrived. The deeper we investigated, the bigger the problem became. The HOA wasn't sitting on a tiny disputed parcel. Their entire luxury development occupied a portion of my family's 1,100 acres. Then we discovered the most important detail. The original developer had never received legal permission from my uncle to build there. The HOA had been collecting fees and enforcing rules on land they didn't legally own. Victoria's explanations changed every time another document appeared. First, she claimed the HOA owned the land. Then she said the developer had permission, but neither claim could survive the evidence. Eventually, we filed the necessary legal actions to establish my ownership. I wasn't interested in destroying people's homes. The homeowners had purchased their properties believing everything was legitimate. I simply wanted the truth recognized. The HOA argued that the community had existed for too long to be challenged. But time doesn't erase a valid property deed. The old survey, county records, and physical boundary marker all told the same story. The land belonged to me. When the ruling finally recognized my family's ownership, Victoria could no longer pretend the HOA had authority over everything around it. But I still had a choice. I could have demanded that everyone leave immediately. Instead, I met with the homeowners. I explained exactly what had happened and showed them the evidence. They hadn't created this mess. They had bought their homes believing the paperwork was legitimate, so I chose a different path. A new agreement gave the homeowners a legal way forward while protecting my rights as the landowner. The HOA's old authority was replaced with a transparent structure, and new boundaries were officially established. For the first time, everyone knew exactly where property lines were. Months earlier, Victoria had stood at the gate and ordered me to turn around. Now she stood at that same gate, knowing exactly who owned the land beneath her feet. I hadn't destroyed her community. I hadn't taken revenge. I had simply followed the evidence, trusted the law, and taken action. Standing on the hill overlooking my 1,100 acres, I finally understood what my uncle had been protecting all those years. It wasn't just land. It was our family's history. And when an entire HOA tried to claim what wasn't theirs, I made sure that history stayed where it belonged. Like, subscribe and share. And where are you watching from?